Iowa has long been known as one of America's top farming states. From corn and soybeans to eggs and pork, Iowa's 87,000 farms feed people across the country. But alongside the bountiful harvest is a mounting public and environmental health crisis.
Everywhere we go, we're getting reports from people who say that they did everything right, they never drank, they never smoked, they jogged their whole life, and yet whole clusters of people in their community who are not genetically related are getting cancer.
There have been a couple times here on this House floor where a Republican colleague will pull me aside and say, "And what do you think is the cause of our cancer problem?" And then they'll look around and they'll say, "It's in the water, isn't it?"
Iowa has one of the fastest growing cancer rates in the United States. Decades of peer-reviewed research link pesticides and nitrates, both a product of agricultural practices, to serious health harms, including cancer. But amid pressure from the powerful farm lobby, state and federal leaders have shown an unwillingness to tackle the problem. In Palo Alto County, where cancer rates are almost 50% higher than the national average, the crisis feels impossible to ignore.
We are really excited to have you tonight at the Cancer Listening Session, and we look forward to learning more about you, your experiences, and your relationship with Iowa's high and rising cancer rates. I want to encourage you to share your thoughts and experiences while keeping in mind that we're trying to facilitate an open-minded community dialogue, and if you agree with the statement, you'll raise your hand. I or someone close to me has dealt with a cancer diagnosis. Raise your hand if that's true.
My wife, she passed away from cancer. And my mom passed away from ovarian cancer. And there was like 5 people in 2 miles that passed away on my road, and they were teetotalers. They'd never drank.
My best friend, her 7-year-old son was just diagnosed in April with stage 3 kidney cancer. So that's really sparked us more to come here. And so hearing the stories of the family history with some of these people, I mean, it makes you very concerned about what your family history could be and what your futures could look like, what your children's futures could look like.
Nobody wants to be held accountable for you being the #1 cause of cancer in Iowa.
Like farmers everywhere, Iowa's farmers are always working to produce more food as profitably as they can. For most, that has meant routine use of pesticides and fertilizers. The weed killers, insecticides, and fungicides farmers spray on their fields help them fight pests. And the fertilizers they use, both synthetic and derived from livestock manure, help them harvest higher yields. Iowa livestock operations produce over 100 million pounds of manure each year. The nitrogen and phosphorus that make synthetic fertilizers and livestock manure so helpful for crop growth cause problems when they leach off farm fields into waterways. Nitrogen, when combined with oxygen, becomes a harmful compound called nitrate. Massive amounts of nitrates and pesticides routinely wash into the rivers and streams that become sources for drinking water. Scientists have linked nitrate-contaminated water to cancer, birth defects, and many other health problems. Aaron Lehman, a 5th-generation farmer and president of the Iowa Farmers Union, raises corn, soybeans, oats, and hay with his family north of Des Moines. He calls drinking water contamination, quote, really scary.
I've been farming for about 30 years. For the vast majority of my career, I have farmed conventionally. We really started this effort to diversify the farm, try things like small grains, probably about 15 years ago.
His family is trying to cut farm pollution, and he wants policies to help all farmers do the same.
So the pesticide issues, Iowa's had recently, a lot of publicity around concerns about not only disease prevalence and rising rates of cancer, but also the drinking water.
We have a problem. We've had a problem for a long time. We know in Iowa, farmers rely on pesticides, safe, effective pesticides are really important. But we know that there are real concerns. It's also wrong to blame farmers. We know that farmers have been put in a bad position, oftentimes making choices that are very difficult and lead to an unbalanced system.
Do you ever have your water tested?
We actually use the Des Moines water system
Okay.
for our drinking water. In this farm, on another one where my son lives, we have well water.
Okay.
Both are really scary. And we use more practices like edge of field buffers and cover crops and a diverse rotation. Okay. Those things we feel good about moving us in the right direction in water quality. Farmers understand that being so dependent upon the pesticide industry, which is only controlled by a couple players in the world, is not good for agriculture. So addressing the power of those decision makers and how that impacts our farm and our communities and our landscapes is an essential part of the question.
The Iowa State House, Democratic Representative and physician Austin Baith calls nitrate contamination a public health emergency.
We've known about this cancer crisis for now 2 years, and not a damn thing has been done about it by our state government.
The nitrate levels in the Raccoon River are twice that of the EPA limit. I don't think it's quite right that we have no regulations on how much fertilizer can be dumped in our watershed upstream.
Opponents call his push government overreach into the state's biggest industry.
The year I started here in the legislature, a report came out finding that Iowa has the fastest climbing cancer rate in the country. More and more, as we're starting to try to figure out what factors might be related, we're not coming up with an obvious risk factor of the traditional causes of cancer. Smoking, obesity, alcohol use, things like that. We have some risk factors there, but not enough to really explain why Iowa's cancer rates are so high.
Not even radon, because radon is very high in Iowa.
We have elevated radon rates in Iowa for sure, and that's probably contributing. But it doesn't really fully explain the problem, and radon very specifically causes lung cancer. And we have more than just a lung cancer problem.
How much political power does the agricultural industry wield in Iowa, and does that play a role, do you think?
There are 2 lobbyists that sit outside these chamber doors who are employed by Iowa Farm Bureau. So the power of corporate farming special interests is readily visible within the walls of this Capitol every single day the legislators come to session. And while I can't say for sure this is the cause of it, I will tell you that there time and time again when I propose bills to improve Iowa's water quality, and the chair of the Iowa Environmental Protection Committee of the Iowa House throws it in the trash, so to speak. These bills don't see the light of day. They don't get a subcommittee hearing. They don't get any sort of debate. The issue is swept under the rug. You know, we see in Minnesota, right across our northern border, that farmers are implementing a lot of these changes at a much faster rate than Iowa farmers, and a lot of that is because they're supported financially in doing so. We know that agricultural is an important economic engine to Iowa, and so it is worth it for us to invest, to use public dollars to invest in this, not only to help make farming sustainable and healthy, but to protect our lives. And I think it's really important that we point out, this isn't a urban versus rural thing. If you look at the heat map of cancer in Iowa, this is a rural problem. These are farmers and their families who are getting sick.
Not everyone sees regulation as the answer.
I want to talk about the EPA and the targeted attacks on our farmers.
What we call this is regulatory whiplash.
So ultimately the goal is simple. Let's cut the red tape. Let's keep standards science-based and flexible, very key, and help farmers get conservation tools in use faster.
I've been talking about it as I don't want to play a blame game here. I don't want to throw rocks. I don't want this rural-urban divide.
Agribusiness groups say Iowa farmers run on razor-thin margins and warn additional costly rules would cripple a vital industry. They tout voluntary conservation as a way to make progress without mandates. Des Moines is home to one of the world's largest water nitrate removal facilities. Scientists work every day to strip a nearly invisible chemical from Iowa's drinking water. It's colorless, odorless, and nearly impossible to detect. But when elevated levels of nitrates pollute drinking water, the health risks are dire.
When nitrate levels are over the EPA standard, it could be harmful to pregnant women and children under 6 months old.
We have the ability to see poor birth outcomes, including potential birth defects and other. We also have the possibility for those 0 to 6 month infants to end up with reduced oxygen in their bloodstream and to really end up in acute care.
This is the Raccoon River. I get it every morning, usually about 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll get 2 bottles full and bring up to the lab. And then give it to the chemist and they run their test on it.
So every morning our sampling tech gets river samples for us. Nitrate is one of the main things we test for in the lab, although we do a lot of other testing as well. Nitrate is a dissolved compound, so we collect a sample out of the bit larger sample and then we filter it through this filter. It takes out some of the yucky stuff. As you can see, the rivers are pretty brown and dirty and gross. And this is an ion chromatograph. This measures dissolved things in the water. Specifically, we use it for nitrates. We also test fluoride, chloride, sulfate, bromide, and phosphate with this instrument. So nitrate is the big one. We have to test that every day. So this is what comes off. It's called a chromatograph, and these little peaks are each different analyte that we're seeing. This is the Raccoon River, so there's a little bit of fluoride in there. The second largest one is our nitrate peak.
The Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, does have a standard for nitrate of 10 milligrams per liter, but when there's too much of it in water and it's consumed, that could become a health risk for certain populations.
The EPA sets an enforceable limit for nitrates in drinking water at no more than 10 milligrams per liter. This summer, nitrate levels reached roughly double that in water taken from the Raccoon River in Des Moines.
So this is the filter building. We have 16 sand and gravel filters. So after lime softening, the water is coming into the filters. It's slowly making its way through 2 feet of sand and 2 feet of various sizes of rock. If we are having nitrate issues like we are right now, then send a section of that water to the nitrate removal facility. Each of these tanks is a removal vessel. Wow, we've got this media inside of it, this resin that the nitrate particle is attached to. Water is flowing through these vessels. It's removing the nitrate from the water so that the nitrate in the, once it's finished from here, it's going down to about 0.
New science has intensified the debate. Hundreds of Iowans gathered to hear the findings of a 2-year study on the sources of pollutants in Iowa's drinking water and recommendations on how to improve this situation.
I'm really excited to welcome you all here to the first official presentation of findings from the Central Iowa Water Research Assessment. We are, of course, on the tail end of a lawn watering ban that occurred because the incredible, best in the world nitrate removal system in Des Moines Waterworks was struggling to keep up with the amount of nitrates in our water. The public is entitled to the best objective, factual information currently available, even if those facts contain bad news or are uncomfortable for certain groups.
Among those leading the conversation was Adam Shriver with the Harkin Institute, which hosted the forum.
And I want to start out with the cancer study. Tell us about that and how that plays into this drinking water report that is getting so much attention.
Well, basically, Iowa has had the #2 rate of cancer for 3 years in a row, and we're one of the few states where the cancer rate is increasing. And if you listen to a lot of conversations from some of the leadership in the state, what they want to talk about is over drinking, smoking, people using tanning beds. But of course in Iowa, there's this big elephant in the room, which is that we're the #1 leading state in confined animal feeding operations for hogs and for battery caged chickens, and also that we're the state that applies the most amount of synthetic fertilizers and chemical fertilizers. We thought that it was really important to make sure that that's being looked at as well when we're giving a full consideration of Iowa's cancer rates. 2 years ago, the administrator of Polk County, John Norris, decided that he wanted to look at all of the drinking water issues that are happening in Iowa because we've been facing some really serious challenges. And so he got some money from the American Recovery Act. They hired a team of 16 top-notch scientists and just told them, just give us the facts. And they came up with some really important conclusions. So one of the conclusions was that 80% of the nitrates that are affecting Des Moines' drinking water are coming from agriculture.
Why was it important to hold this forum to invite the public in to talk about the drinking water report?
I think it's reached a tipping point where Iowans really want to do something about it. Policy needs to be shaped by the best information available and by an informed public. After all, as the event title says, it is our water and our future that we're fighting for.
Despite public outcry for more information and more action, officials quietly cut funds to promote the drinking water study that links water pollution to agriculture.
We continue to go to the State House, we continue to go to Washington to try to get our voices heard, and we're going backwards now. Our state has a trifecta, as we have at the national level, and it has done major damage to our state.
Yes, agriculture plays a huge role in all this, as noted from the scientists today, but it's not a surprise. You know, we regulate construction sites to contain their water on site when they build. That shouldn't be any different than the agricultural world, but we don't regulate it. It's time that we start regulating agriculture.
One of the most important things that we've lost is just listening to science and data and being objective in our thinking instead of trying to come up with a reason that it's okay to do something wrong. If there isn't a better way, we should still hold the ideal of finding one instead of just accepting this is all there is.
In order to really address the problem, you've got to work with farmers. You got to put in good choices in place for farmers to make good choices for their farm and their community. If anything, we're moving away from those efforts by public policy. No, we're making massive cuts in conservation partnerships with farmers, whether that's existing programs that farmers have had pulled out from under them or proposals to take away technical service people in our local offices. It's going to be harder and harder.
The system is not set up to help farmers adopt new practices to help limit how many nitrates get into our watershed. So what more incentive does somebody need than to do something, especially if they're given the tools to do it? If anything else, but just for the sake of protecting their kids.
You can have meetings till you're blue in the face. If we're not going to do something, it needs to be somebody needs to step up to the plate and do it.
Iowa's story is more than crops and commerce. It's about people, from children diagnosed with cancer to farmers rethinking traditional practices to lawmakers confronting entrenched power. The choices made here ripple far beyond state lines. The question is not just what Iowa grows, but whether it can be a model or a cautionary tale for the rest of the nation.